Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. Just behind me here is one of my 3 pumpkin patches that we're going to harvest today. And then I think we deserve a bit of roast pumpkin soup. Some of these pumpkins are well and truly ready for harvest. You can tell the little tendrils down there have browned off, and that's a bit of a sign. Another sign is that the leaves and the plant is slowly starting to yellow and die off. But not all of the plants are doing that. This plant here is still quite vigorous, and these 2 pumpkins here, which started to grow a bit later than the others, probably aren't quite ready for the harvest. They grew a lot later in the season once the rains came in autumn. So what I might do is actually leave those plants in place. The reason why I want to harvest most of my pumpkins today is because of these guys. That area is their winter run. They've kind of outlived their summer run for the moment, and they really need to get to fresh ground. So that's what I'm going to do today with this lot. And likewise out here in my backyard pumpkin patch, I've got these young chicks. They're about 7 or 8 weeks old, and they would really love to get out of this brooder area and into my pumpkin patch. Last year in this area I also brought up a young batch of chickens, which I did move off to other areas, and during summer I've grown some pumpkins and they've done beautifully with all of that fertility from the chickens, and I want to prepare this bed again. So I want to be able to move these young chicks out into this area. And to do that, I want to move the pumpkins so I can repair fences and make sure that they sort of stay in their allocated area. You can just see here, there is some wire mesh, but it's been weighted down by all these pumpkins that have grown on this very vigorous vine. We recently had a little bit of frost and it has affected some of the leaves, but not all. There still seems to be quite a bit of growth in these plants and some young fruit still growing. But I think time is just about up. We're going to be having more regular frosts coming very soon. So I think these young chicks deserve to get out of their little cage and start enjoying some of this area. The pumpkins hiding in here are a mix between a Queensland blue and a buttercup pumpkin, which are really beautiful and flavourful, and these pumpkins have been delicious, and even the skin cooks up beautifully. Some of them have quite a lot of markings on their skin, but it hasn't affected the inside and the flavour at all. And it's really been a joy to watch these plants, there's about 3 plants, just take over this area and spill out into the pasture. And we're back into the front garden for the 3rd pumpkin patch, which is just here. It's in the area that I'm going to create a couple more garden beds using the no-dig style in the weeks to come. So we need to get these pumpkins moved as well. In here I've got both the Queensland blue and the buttercup variety. So no more talking about it, let's get into it. First one, a bit spotty, and it looks like something's been sort of chewing away at it. So I reckon that one might be good for our roast pumpkin soup later. And this one looks equally as spotty. So I'm pleased we're out here getting these pumpkins today. But nothing's chewed on it as yet, so we don't need to be as, maybe. So there's little spots there that wouldn't store. So we might be preserving this one by roasting and then freezing the pulp. Now up in this area, during summer I didn't water. I collect my own rainwater. So I've got to be very mindful. If it's going to be dry for a long period, I don't want to be running out. So I didn't water this area. So I know there's not a lot of pumpkins here, but they do get hidden in this grass, so this is my method of finding them. Now this is one of my younger fruit that probably just started growing in autumn, and the plant still looks pretty good, so I might just leave that for a little bit longer. The chickens might force me to bring it in, but I'll leave it for the moment and again just sort of see how it goes for a bit longer. Oh, got one. Okay. This one here is one of my beautiful Queensland blue pumpkins that just are amazing. Let's get it out of here. Oh. And that is one beautiful pumpkin. I do have a few of these magnificent Queensland blue pumpkins in the garden, and this is the second beauty which we'll grab out. Off you go, worms. Get all the worms off it. Beautiful. Come on, little guys, we'll get you out of there. Just got to put the worms back in the garden. Now you can see those little tendrils are really dried off, so this one should really store well. They were good, and they were good. These tendrils are just a little bit greener, but I don't want to leave them in the garden any longer because the mice and rats do start to find them and the other sort of bugs that start to damage them. So then they don't store anyway. Another young pumpkin here that really won't reach its prime. Oh, here we go. That looks pretty good. And again, the tendrils are nicely browned off. And just back over here, we've got one of our buttercup pumpkins. I'll just get the wildlife off it. And we'll get these into the cart. Oh, here we go. Here's a good size Queensland blue. Oh, hello, hello. Oh, it's a beauty. Look at this guy. I really don't know why they're getting all of that sort of scarring on them, but I have found that it doesn't really impact the taste, but it does encourage me to use them up fairly quickly, and I certainly don't eat the skin. So we'll leave those guys, but just looking around, look what starts to grow in these wilder areas when you've had a couple of seasons of letting things flower and go to seed. This is a celery plant that will soon be destroyed by my chickens, so I might harvest some of that celery to go in our soup. Now, I think this one is on a different vine to these two, so I think I'm safe to cut this off without affecting the other two pumpkins. All right, now we can just head down to the next pumpkin patch. Now, in this space here, I did keep it watered during summer because it is part of the general veggie patch area. So although it's quite a small area, I do have a number of pumpkins here. It's a rather nice size buttercup. And another Queensland blue. I love the game of hide and seek. You kind of play in a pumpkin patch after summer and all this growth has happened. You just kind of lose track of where your pumpkins are often. I've got another beauty right here. But once again, all that cover can hide the fact that rodents have found your patch. Ugh. Our gardens can be a feast for the wildlife. I'll pull that off maybe. No, it won't come off. I'll cut that off, I think, and return these worms to the garden. There we go. And I'll just remove the rest by hand. My pumpkin patch is turning out a bit like my sweet potato patch, where those little bush rats have decided to start having a go at the produce. Don't blame them. They're really beautiful, these pumpkins. Here we go. Okay, that one looks pretty good. And just a couple more hiding in here. Again, that stalk is starting to decay. Really time to get this out. Oh, that one just pulled straight off. So they're not going to store that well. What I'll probably be doing with these is roasting the flesh and freezing it like that for future soups. Or you can cut that up and freeze in cubes just to grab out and roast. So that looks like all the pumpkins in this patch. I think it's time to go and empty these before we head out to the back. Okay, so we're just going to unload the pumpkins here and sort through which need to be used straight away and preserved, or what can be cured and stored. Now, I thought I'd utilise what I call my bus stop greenhouse. So named because it does look like a little bus stop shelter. I did build this in the hope that it would raise my little seedlings in spring to be big and strong. But the problem is my eave is quite deep and the sun at that time of year really doesn't get most of the area. I had been hoping to use the thermal mass of my brick wall to help warm the space, but because there's a lack of light and the sun doesn't really hit it that well, it's been a bit of a failure. But I'm not going to waste it. I'm actually going to take it off the wall, flip it around and put it right under the eave so it does get that sun in spring when it's needed. But for the moment, I think it will make a great curing spot for my pumpkins. So now we can just sort out what is a storage pumpkin and what needs to be used up. And then we can just pop them up on our shelves. So that sort of one I'm going to have to put aside and take in to use straight away. Likewise, this little one that stalk's just broken off, that's not going to survive. And then I might just take this and wash all these little worms off as well. That one's good. We'll see how this goes. It's got a couple of little marks, but I might just leave it in here anyway. And we've got to keep an eye on that. That actually I will store, mostly because I've got lots to use already, and it doesn't have any little marks on it other than the scab look. Ooh, there's a surprise. This is actually one of my oldest pumpkins. I think it was the first one to grow, and it's been split open. You can see there's little slaters in there, and the worms are enjoying it, and it's quite hollowed out, although it doesn't look like rodents have attacked it at all. It's just sort of naturally degrading because I've probably left it too long. So another one for the kitchen. So out of all of those pumpkins, this is my straight to the kitchen pile. I will be preserving, as I've said, but I can also share these with friends and family who are prepared to use it fairly quickly. As for my other pumpkins, I'm going to leave them here, let them dry out, and then brush off any of that dirt. I've just spaced them so that none of them are touching. They've all got lots of space and air circulating. Okay, let's go and grab the backyard pumpkins now. All right, well, we'll start here. Thanks, Ray. We'll start here with the plants along my fence line. You can see on these ones, I've had rodents running along the fence line. They kind of live underneath my chook house. So I'll be washing that off before storing them. But they haven't started gnawing on them yet, so all good. Like the front garden, there's still some flowers and some new younger pumpkins and some fresh leaves. But I do want to repair this fence, and with the weight of these pumpkins on here, that's never going to happen. So we've got to get them off. Well, that's all of my pumpkins from this area, except for one. And I reckon this guy will be a little hard to get out and store. So I'm just going to leave that there until I need to harvest it and use it straight away. So without all of this weight hanging off my fences, I should be able to get them straightened up and ready for these little guys to come out here and enjoy all the pickings. Now, most of these pumpkins were pretty good in respect to rodent damage and deterioration, so I'll be able to store them. I have actually harvested about 9 of these and enjoyed them in soups and roasted, and I found even though the skin is fairly motley, the skin was still quite tender and tasty. And I'll just give these 3 a bit of a wash first to get that rodent poo off them. Well, that's pumpkin harvest 2023 all done. I'm pretty happy with the curing position here. They should cure very well. I will be keeping an eye on them just to check for any that are deteriorating or for rodent activity, in which case I'll use a trap to see if I can remove them. Hopefully they won't become an issue and I won't have to do that. One extra thing that I've added here is just some shade protection. You don't want to be storing your pumpkins in direct sun, so that should keep them shaded well enough. And I've opened up the ventilation at the top just to make sure the pumpkins don't heat up too much in there. And I'm just left with these pumpkins to do something with straight away because they are damaged or deteriorating. So I'll take them to the kitchen and get them processed, but one is heading off to be roast pumpkin soup. Now my soup needs some celery, so I'm just going to grab this plant here because it will soon be devoured by chickens otherwise. There we go. That was a volunteer. I love to let my garden just grow free food for me. And we also need a leek. I'm just going to take this end one to give plenty more room for these little beetroots to grow. This leek also was a volunteer. I transplant little seedlings from where they just start to grow in the garden to a more appropriate spot. And with these ones, I did put them in fairly deeply. Probably not deeply enough. I'd like the white part kind of about that big, but I'm still getting there with my leeks. But I think that will be perfect in the roast pumpkin soup. Not sure how long these 2 will last out in the garden once the chickens get out here, but we'll see how they do. I've got my ingredients for my roast pumpkin soup. I'm going to head inside and get that going now. If you'd like to see that, please hang around to the end of the video. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining me in my video today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and bye for now.